It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. All right, as you already know, it's time, so let's address the elephant in the room. So there was an article written not too long ago by Peter Stevens titled The Elephant in the Agile Living Room. And I went back and I read this article and I thought that it had some merit. So I wanted to share some of the information from the article with you. It goes on to say the Agile movement has no positive message to offer company leadership because Agile transformation is often not about things executives care about. These transformations are very low on the executive priority list. Until we fix this, agility will not be a high priority. The personal agility system brings genuine benefit to executives, executive agility. Let's take a look at how and why this works and show potential benefits of embracing agility for the executives themselves. Okay, let's pause there. What I can tell you is this is definitely an elephant in the room. I find myself when I'm talking to leaders with a misunderstanding of either Agile's going to help me do more things at once, or Agile's going to help me release a larger number of lines of code, or we're going to be able to do 3x or 4x the number of projects that we typically do because we're doing Agile, and Agile's going to allow us to increase our work in progress. When in actuality, Agile's not designed to do any of those things. The truth is, executives often get a bad rap because their primary focus is what am I going to get, when am I going to get it, and how much is it going to cost. But truth be told, again, that should be their focus. That should be where they are. So the question becomes, how do we get this balance? Well, he goes on to say he recently attended a meetup presentation given by a senior transformation leader of a well known organization, and they highlighted the challenges executives face. Here are the challenges. An agile transformation is about giving up responsibility. The executive is forced to find a new role without any clarity about what that new role is. Implicit is the loss of status, power, and influence with a corresponding risk of executive pay cut. I don't know that I've ever heard the executive pay cut portion, but the rest I have heard, right? That they're worried. If I have nothing to manage and nothing to lead, what am I going to do? What are my responsibilities going to be? How is my role going to change? How am I going to be a witness to this agile transformation? At a different setting, another agile transformation leader of a large company asked, "Why is your company doing an agile transformation?" To improve employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction, they answered. How important are these topics to your executives? Since they're typically not a significant factor in most executives' bonus, their commitment is somewhere between giving lip service or none at all. What I can tell you is many executives want you to believe that, yes, this is right on the forefront of their radar, but the truth is it's not. And I'm not, once again, I'm not dinging executives. I'm not saying in any way that they're not all they're cracked up to be or that they need to be finding something else to do. But I don't know that they know their place in the agile workspace. So let's ask another question. What does agility offer to leadership personally? Until now, very little. I don't care if you're choosing Scrum, Kanban, SAFe. Most, if not all, the other frameworks out there are all about teams producing stuff, some type of product or service. Most managers and executives aren't actually part of the team that produces the stuff, but they are accountable for the teams and their results, but they're not part of those teams and can't actively influence those results. So when you start thinking about the position of a senior executive, they're exceptionally vulnerable. They're likely to be in competition with each other and serve at the whim of their boards or the whim of their shareholders. What does this agile transformation offer them? A loss of power, a loss of influence, turning them into coaches, probably a significant loss of income to go along with it. So why exactly do they want to go there? All right, let's pause. What I can tell you is this is true. It's not a good selling point, but the truth is, if leaders don't know what their place is in Agile and what they should be doing or why they should be doing it, they are infinitely going to struggle. So that opens up the door for the big question of the day. Why should leaders care about Agile transformation? Why do they need to care? Why do they need to be a part of it? And, when I first heard those quotes above and those leaders and their positions, I have to admit I was shocked. I didn't see it coming. It was like a blindside, right? And part of the shock was just the misunderstanding or the misrepresentation of the understanding. So I think I found four things that leaders need to start to figure out. And I'm going to give you the four tips, the four tricks here, the four things that leaders need to draw focus to. Number one, they need to care about their teams and not necessarily care about what their teams are doing. Let's be careful, but they need to care about their teams. They need to allow them to be self organized. They need to allow them to be self managed. They need to allow them to work together and to communicate openly and to have open and honest, unfiltered communication. They need to create an environment of psychological safety and inherent trust so that they can work together, right? We need to always feel like we're in an environment where we can openly speak and get things done and be critical of each other so that we can make sure we're vetting out the right ideas and building the right product or service. Number two, they need to care about their customers. I've heard so many times where leaders are focused on improved output, improved output, but very rarely do I hear leaders bend back and say, okay, my expected outcome is X. That's what I'm trying to do. How can I get to X? How can I get to that outcome? So that's where we need to shift the focus from caring about the output of the situation to the customers and their needs, the outcome, with as little output as possible. All right, number three, they need to care about their organization. So sometimes, to their own detriment, they find themselves shooting themselves in the foot or shooting their teams in the knee and unable to deliver things because they just don't care about the organization as a whole. They care about their personal needs or their personal project. And I know that sounds silly, but those attitudes still exist out there. And finally, they need to care about themselves. And I'm not talking about in a self grandeur way. I'm talking about in a self awareness way. They need to care about who they are and what perception is, because perception is 100% of everything, mostly. So it's one of these things where instead of becoming the host of the wine and cheese party and always, oh, woe is me, right? The leadership's job is to not point fingers, but to make sure that they're getting to the point where they better understand how to become a servant leader and how to serve the organization, the teams, and themselves. So you might ask yourself some questions to get there, like, what's wrong with the loss? What's wrong with the loss of power, right? If you have, something that comes in and it's not a winner, it's okay. If you have a loss of power and you're no longer the major center of the sphere of influence, that's okay. Let the team pick the pieces up. Let the team run with it. Growth is a big thing, but failure is an even bigger thing as long as they pivot and adjust from those failures. Failure is marked as a first attempt in learning, right? And we need to adjust and pivot accordingly. What's wrong with focusing on coaching? Why can't we coach interlaterally, coach executives, coach leaders, coach team members, and have these leaders become coaches that can coach each other? I think it's just so important that we work together and grow so that we can have an open mindset and not a fixed mindset in everything we do. Finally, this is kind of funny. What's wrong with the loss of income? If you look back to that story that had the guy in Seattle who was the CEO who took his income and divided it across everyone so they could all make a decent salary, I'm not going that far. But what I am saying is, if a little more has to go into the pot to help teams be successful so that they can eventually become high performing teams, I'm for that. I think it's a good idea. And I think that if you're trying to create that high performance kick butt organization, you need to figure out creative ways for you to reform and refold and get things into a model that's going to work for leadership. Now, I've created a leadership's guide to agility, and it goes through and it talks about the difference between traditional portfolio management and agile portfolio management. It shows you some case studies from companies and how limiting work in progress can help you get there. It talks a little bit about Little's law and about the Parkinson law. It talks about many, many, many different things that are going to help leaders be effective. But it also talks about what Agile is going to help them discover and how they can switch from being a manager to a true leader. So I encourage you to grab a copy of that leadership guide. And just in case you're interested, I'm going to throw it out there. One of the big things that we do are called Agile Leadership Summits, and we've been doing a lot of them lately. There are lots of organizations who want to know, how do I get this message to my leaders in such a way that it's easy for them to understand, but more importantly, that not only can they consume it, but they can apply it. And I think that this Leadership Summit has really been a great guide in lieu of going for a certification of any type in Agile leadership, this is a great way that you could have something that's customized, form, fit, and feel to your organization and to your group, and really drive that Agile home to them so that they can see what it is, proactively analyze it, and figure out how far down the path they want to go personally, and where they're going to hand things off, and with what level of confidence do they have that this can be successful, so that we can help them succeed with Agile. So that's going to do it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic or a story you want us to cover, feel free to reach out to us. Learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to talk more about what you want to talk about. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.